Some of my favorite conspiracy theories to research are ones revolving around time, reality, and simulation. So today we're going to be going down the deepest conspiracy theory rabbit hole. So how this is going to work is we are first going to talk about some pretty basic theories and theories, that most people have heard of, but then as we progress through the video, the theories should get much more deeper. So let's start off pretty basic with the simulation hypothesis. Now, the simulation hypothesis is basically the idea that our entire reality, everything that we see, everything that we touch, and everything that we experience might not actually be real at all. Now, it's the theory that we're living inside some kind of computer simulation, kind of like a super advanced video game, and we just don't really realize it. Now, the idea is that a civilization in the future could have the technology to simulate entire worlds, complete with conscious beings who think that they're real. And if that's, something that's possible, then statistically, it's more likely that we're living in one of those simulations rather than just living in the original base reality. Now, this theory became really popular after a philosopher named Nick Bostrom published a paper in 2003. Now, he said that there are three main possibilities. One, either civilizations go extinct before becoming advanced enough to run simulations. Two, they reach that point, but they choose not to run the simulations. And then three, a civilization runs those simulations, and there are billions upon billions of simulated realities. Now, if that third option is true, then the odds that we are in original reality are, basically close to zero. Then there's evidence that people point to. For example, the universe seems to follow strict mathematical rules, almost like a code in a program. Quantum physics also adds to the mystery because particles behave differently when they're observed, almost as if, reality only renders when it's being looked at. Kind of like in a video game, the world around you only renders if you're there. You know what I'm talking about? Like some parts of the map aren't being rendered in to, save the load on your computer, so only where you're at right now is being loaded in. Scientists have also pointed out that there's a maximum speed in the universe, which is of course the speed of light, which kind of feels like a frame rate limit in a simulation. Others also think that things like deja vu or glitches in perception could be hints that, something's off in the code. And because of that, people have started to wonder if consciousness itself might just be data being processed. If you think about it, every thought, every emotion, it could all just be electrical signals in some massive system. And the scary part is, if any of this is true, whoever is running the simulation could technically pause, edit, or even delete us without us even knowing. So anyways, the simulation hypothesis is the idea that our world is not real in the way we think it is, and that we could just be living inside an incredibly advanced digital illusion created by something or someone far beyond us. Quantum immortality. Now, quantum immortality is a theory that comes from quantum mechanics. It's basically the idea that you can never actually experience your own death. You might die in one version of reality, but your consciousness keeps going in another version where you survived. So from your own point of view, you never, really die. You just keep waking up somewhere else. Now, it all ties back into something called the many worlds interpretation. Now, that's a theory that says that every time a quantum event happens, the universe splits into multiple versions. In one universe, something happens one way, and in another, it happens differently. So every possible outcome actually happens somewhere. Now, if you apply that idea to your own life, it means that every time you could die, there's another universe where you don't die. And your consciousness, for some reason, always continues in that surviving version. Now, because of that, no matter how dangerous or fatal a situation is, there's always some version of reality where you make it through. You might get, hit by a car in one world, but in another, it misses you by an inch. You might die of old age in one timeline, but in another, maybe some miracle drug cures you. The theory says that your mind only ever experiences the realities where you're still alive. So to you, it feels like you just keep going forever. Now, this gets really scary when you think about it, deeply. You know, it means that from your perspective, you could technically be immortal, but everyone, you know, else around you could still die in their own timelines, if that makes sense. So you just keep going on, you know, maybe getting older, maybe even, you know, getting stuck in worse and worse versions of reality because you can't actually die. Some versions of the theory suggest that your awareness might even continue beyond physical death, but that's where, you know, it starts getting kind of philosophical, so we'll kind of avoid that for now. But anyways, quantum immortality is basically the idea that consciousness never truly ends. It just keeps shifting into versions of reality where you survive, meaning from, you know, your own point of view, death never actually happens. But also something I just thought of, it also means that you could die, or technically a version of you could die and you would never realize it. Because from your perspective, you just keep living and living and living. Yeah, I don't know, kind of crazy. It fucks with your head. The Mandela Effect. Now, the Mandela Effect is a really weird theory that suggests we might be living in alternate realities that sometimes overlap or merge together. Now, of course, it gets its name from Nelson Mandela, because a lot of people swear that they remember him dying in prison back in the 1980s. But in our current timeline, you know, the timeline we're in right now, he actually died in 2013. Now, that collective false memory is what first got people thinking that something strange might be going on with our reality. And I mean, it's not just that one event. I mean, there are tons of examples where people remember things completely different from how they actually are. Like, you got the Monopoly man with a monocle. You know, a lot of people think he had a monocle, but in reality, or in our timeline, he never had a monocle. Or probably the most famous one from Star Wars. A lot of people remember it, Luke, I am your father. But the real line was, no, I am your father. You know, stuff like that makes people question if our memories are wrong or if reality itself somehow changed. Now, some people try to explain it using the idea of parallel universes. You know, basically the theory says that our world occasionally shifts between slightly different timelines, and when it does, you know, those small details change. So maybe in one universe, it really was, Luke, I am your father, and in another, it's, no, I am your father. When the timelines overlapped or they, you know, blended together, some people remember the old version while others remember the new one. And that's why it sometimes feels like reality has glitched. Now, there's also a scientific side to the Mandela Effect, and it focuses on how human memory actually works. Basically, our brains fill in gaps all the time, and we tend to misremember things in ways that make sense to us. So, I mean, it's possible that these false memories are just, you know, the brain doing what it always does, but just on a massive scale that almost just feels supernatural. So anyways, the Mandela Effect is basically the idea that our world might not be as stable as we think it is, and that small differences in our memories could actually be signs that we're slipping between alternate versions of reality. Retrocausality. Retrocausality is the idea that the future can actually affect the past, because normally we think of time as moving in one direction. You know, like something happens and then that causes something else to happen later. But retrocausality flips that idea around. It suggests that an event in the future could be the cause of something that happens right now, or even something that has already happened in the past. Now, it comes from some pretty weird stuff in quantum physics. So in certain experiments, like the double slit experiment, particles like electrons seem to decide how they're going to behave only after they're measured. Which, you know, doesn't make much sense, because it's like the measurement in the present moment is changing what the particle did in the past. And that's where the idea of retrocausality really started to gain attention, because it looks like time isn't as simple as we think it is. So if you take that same idea and apply it to the universe, it means that the future might be able to send information backward in time. Now, if you think about that for a second, it means that something that hasn't even happened yet could be shaping your choices right now, or maybe even influencing how events in the past actually played out. Some scientists have even wondered if this could explain things like deja vu or premonitions, you know, since your brain might somehow be picking up on signals from a future that already exists. And it also messes with the idea of free will, because if the future is already influencing the past, then maybe everything is already set in place, and what we think of as choice is just a part of a timeline that loops in both directions. So retrocausality is basically the idea that time doesn't just move forward, and that the future might have just as much control over the past as the past does over the future. The Holographic Universe. The Holographic Universe theory is the idea that our entire reality might actually be a kind of hologram, and not like in the sci-fi see-through projection kind of way, but in the sense that everything we experience in 3 dimensions could actually be information that's stored on a 2-dimensional surface somewhere out in the universe. Basically, it's like the 3D world we live in is just a projection of data, you know, kind of like how a hologram looks 3D, even though it's just light on a flat surface. Now, the idea came from physicists who were trying to understand black holes. Now, when matter falls into a black hole, it seems like all the information about it should just disappear forever. But that doesn't make sense, because according to the laws of physics, information can't be destroyed. So scientists started to realize that all of the information that falls into a black hole might actually be stored on its surface, not inside of it. And that led to the bigger idea that maybe the entire universe works the same exact way. So instead of reality being built from physical matter, you know, the way we think, it all could just be encoded data on a cosmic surface far away, and we're living inside a projection of that data. It's kind of like a super advanced version of how a computer creates a 3D video game world from code written on a flat screen. I mean, what's wild is when researchers studied cosmic background radiation, they found patterns that actually fit what you'd expect to see if the universe was holographic. And of course, that's not proof, but it's strange enough that scientists are seriously exploring that idea. And if that's true, then what we see, what we touch, and what we experience isn't the full picture. It's just the visible part of something way deeper, you know, something that exists in a form that we can't really perceive. So basically, the holographic universe theory is basically the idea that everything around us, even space itself, could be a projection of information coming from a 2-dimensional reality that holds the true structure of our universe. Time loop universe theory. Now, the time loop universe theory is this really interesting idea that time isn't actually moving in a straight line from the past to the future. Instead, it's constantly looping. Now, that means that the universe might be stuck repeating the same timeline over and over again, kind of like a cosmic version of like Groundhog Day, but on a scale that's so huge that we don't even realize that it's happening. The theory comes from the idea that time itself might be cyclical, not linear. Some scientists and philosophers have suggested that when the universe eventually reaches the end of its life, everything collapses back into a single point, just like how it started with the Big Bang. Then from that point, it explodes outward again, creating a new universe that plays out the exact same way as before. If that's true, it would mean that every single thing that's ever happened will happen again, exactly the same way, forever. And that ties into something called the Big Bounce theory. Now, instead of the universe ending in total destruction, it resets. It bounces back, it restarts, and it begins another cycle. So time isn't, really moving forward endlessly, it's actually looping back around in an infinite circle. Some even think that the tiny hints of this could be hidden in cosmic background radiation, which might carry traces of past universes that existed before ours. It also connects with quantum physics, like if time can loop, then cause and effect might get mixed up. And that could explain deja vu, or those strange moments where things feel oddly familiar, because maybe we're just remembering echoes from a previous loop. So anyways, the time loop universe theory is basically the idea that time never truly ends or begins. It just keeps cycling, and we might all be living through the same universe over and over again without ever realizing it. The DMT Reality Gate. Now, the DMT Reality Gate theory is the idea that when someone takes DMT, they're not just hallucinating, they're actually entering another dimension or a reality. Now, DMT is a naturally occurring chemical that's found in plants, animals, and even in the human brain. When people take it, they describe intense, vivid experiences that feel more real than reality itself. Colors shift, time disappears, and many say that they meet intelligent beings or enter entire worlds that feel structured and alive. Now, the weird part is how similar those experiences are across, completely different people. I mean, someone in the US, might describe meeting the same type of entities that someone in South America sees, even though they've never, interacted with each other. Now that consistency, makes this theory so fascinating. It suggests that DMT might act like a kind of key that unlocks a layer of existence that our normal senses just can't pick up. It's kind of like tuning a radio to a different frequency and suddenly picking up a whole new channel that's, been there the entire time, but you just now found it. Now, there's also a scientific twist to this theory. Basically, the human brain produces small amounts of DMT naturally, especially during things like dreams or near-death experiences or even just extreme moments of stress. So some think that when people die, the flood of DMT might open a gate to another plane of existence, maybe even what people describe as the afterlife. Now that's why DMT experiences often feel spiritual or cosmic, like, stepping outside the simulation of our world and glimpsing what's beyond it. And when you listen to how people describe it, I mean, the similarities are just so eerily similar. Like, some people talk about geometric patterns that go on forever. Others say that they meet machine elves or entities that are, aware of them. And it's never chaotic. Like, it's organized, and that just makes it feel less like a dream and more like you're traveling to a different dimension. So anyways, the DMT Reality Gate theory is basically the idea that DMT isn't creating illusions in the brain. It's opening a doorway into another level of existence that's always been there, just hidden from our normal perception. Time slip phenomena. Now, the time slip phenomena is this really strange theory that says under certain conditions, people can accidentally slip through time. Not through a time machine or anything like that, but naturally, like reality just glitches for a moment and drops someone into another time period. Now, it's not like traveling across the universe, it's more like stepping through a doorway you didn't know was there and suddenly you're standing in the past or even the future. One of the most famous stories about this comes from 1901. Basically, two women were visiting a palace in France when they suddenly found themselves surrounded by people in old-fashioned clothes, carriages, and music from the 1700s. It's kind of like they were just at this palace and then all of a sudden they were just at like a Renaissance festival or something like that. But they said that everything looked and felt completely real, but when they came back later, it was all gone. Now that story started the whole idea of time slips, where someone might unknowingly step into a piece of time that's still somehow active in that place. And this theory shows up in all kinds of accounts. I mean, people say that they've driven down a road and suddenly found themselves surrounded by cars and buildings from decades earlier. Others have walked into a shop that looks completely different, only to go back later and find out that that shop hadn't existed for years. These stories often end with the person returning to their normal time just as suddenly as they left, like nothing ever happened. Now, scientists who have looked into it think that it could have something to do with how time and space are connected. If time isn't perfectly linear, then maybe certain locations act like weak spots where the layers of time overlap. And for just a few seconds, those layers might open up, allowing someone to step between them before they snap shut again. So basically, the time slip phenomena is the idea that time isn't solid or fixed, and that under rare circumstances, people can slip through invisible cracks in reality and experience another moment in history firsthand. The Black Knight Satellite. Now, the Black Knight theory is a story that kind of ties in reality and time into the simulation theory, kind of. So it starts with this mysterious object that's supposedly orbiting Earth. Now, for decades, people have claimed that there's a dark, oddly shaped satellite circling the planet that doesn't belong to any known country or space agency. Now, the weird part is, stories about the Black Knight satellite go back all the way to the 1950s, before humans even had the technology to launch satellites like that. So the theory says that the Black Knight isn't man-made at all. Some believe it's an ancient artificial satellite that's been orbiting Earth for thousands of years, maybe left behind by an advanced civilization or even alien beings. Now, there are reports of strange radio signals coming from space around that time, and people link those signals to the object. Photos taken by NASA during the space shuttle missions show a large black, irregular shaped object floating above the Earth, and that became the supposed proof of the Black Knight satellite. Now, how does this connect to time and the simulation theory? Well, some think that the Black Knight might be a kind of watcher or data collector, something that monitors Earth from outside of our simulated world. Now, if reality is a simulation, then this satellite could be a tool left by whoever or, whatever is running the simulation. They're keeping tabs on us from beyond the boundaries of our digital reality. Others see it as a time-related anomaly, kind of like a leftover piece of technology from a future or past civilization that slipped through a break in time. Because if time isn't perfectly linear, then something like that could have existed outside of normal history, appearing to us as something completely alien. And I mean, if the universe is built on information, like a computer program, then it's not that far-fetched to imagine a piece of code or hardware orbiting our planet, silently watching, maybe even controlling certain parts of the simulation. So the Black Knight satellite theory is basically the idea that there's a mysterious object orbiting Earth that could be proof of something far beyond us. And whether that's alien technology, it's a glitch in time, or it's evidence that our entire world might just be a simulated system being carefully monitored from above. It's kind of like keeping one of those like doggy cams, like in your room to watch your dog. Like that's basically the same thing. It's like a security camera almost. Except this security camera happens to be orbiting our Earth and is just watching us. Pretty sick. Predictive programming. Predictive programming is a theory that suggests that movies, TV shows, and even books are used to subtly prepare the public for real events that are going to happen in the future. It's the idea that powerful groups like governments or secret organizations hide hints of future plans in entertainment so that when those events actually happen, people are less shocked and more accepting to them. Basically, it's like slowly getting people used to an idea before it becomes real. Now, this theory started getting attention when people began noticing strange coincidences between fiction and real life. I mean, for example, the cartoon The Simpsons has been said to predict all kinds of things, from Donald Trump becoming president to the 9/11 attacks. There are also movies made years before major world events that seem to include imagery, symbols, or even storylines that line up almost perfectly with what later happens in real life. The idea is that these coincidences aren't accidents, but intentional warnings or psychological conditioning. Now, the reasoning behind this theory is that if something shocking is planned, showing it first through entertainment can make it feel less impossible. If you've already seen an idea play out on screen, you're more likely to accept it when it happens in reality. It's basically a form of desensitization. So if a future war, a future disaster, or maybe even a future major social change is planned, then the media might plant the concept years ahead of time, disguising it as fiction. That way, the population doesn't rebel or question it as much if it, comes real. It also ties into deeper ideas about control and perception. I mean, if the media shapes how we view reality, then slipping these ideas into pop culture could be a way to guide public thinking. It's almost like reality itself is being written the same way a movie script is, and we as the audience are slowly being prepared for the next scene. So anyways, predictive programming is basically the idea that entertainment isn't always just entertainment, and that hidden messages in media are used to slowly condition society for real events that are planned to happen in the future. It's also a little scary because if this theory is true, or even parts of it are true, then there are either people who can tell the future, or these are people that already know the future, and that's why they are preparing us through entertainment. Wild. The Montauk Project. Now, the Montauk Project is this wild theory that claims that the US government was running secret experiments at an Air Force base in Montauk, New York during the 1970s and the 1980s. Now, on the surface, the base was just supposed to be used for radar research, but the theory says that there was something much bigger happening underground. Things like mind control, time travel, psychic experiments, and even contact with beings from other dimensions. Now, it all supposedly started after the Philadelphia experiment in the 1940s, which we will talk about later, but just quickly so it makes sense. The Philadelphia experiment was an alleged military experiment where a Navy ship was made invisible using electromagnetic fields. Now, apparently that experiment went wrong and tore open a hole in space-time. According to the Montauk theory, scientists spent the next few decades trying to understand what happened and eventually continued that research in secret at Camp Hero, a part of the Montauk Air Force Station. Now, the story really blew up when a man named Preston Nichols came forward claiming that he worked on these experiments. He said that they had built something called the Montauk Chair, a device that could amplify psychic energy and turn thoughts into physical reality. Now, using this machine, test subjects supposedly opened portals to other times and dimensions. Nichols also claimed that they were abducting children for experiments, training them in psychic warfare, and even erasing their memories afterward. So Nichols said that one day, one of these subjects in the chair imagined a giant monster that became real, causing chaos at the base. Now, the project was supposedly shut down after that, and the underground labs were sealed off. Now, what makes it kind of scary is that Camp Hero actually exists, and people who visit say that it gives off this strange, unsettling energy as if something really did happen there. So the Montauk Project is basically the theory that a secret government program was experimenting with time, reality, and human consciousness at a hidden military base, and that those experiments may have pushed the limits of what's possible in ways that we will never fully understand. Now let's talk about the Philadelphia experiment. So the Philadelphia experiment is one of the most famous military conspiracy theories ever talked about. I mean, it's crazy. Now, it's the story that during World War II, the US Navy tried to make a warship completely invisible to radar and possibly even invisible to the human eye. Now, the experiment supposedly took place in 1943 at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, involving a destroyer escort ship called the USS Eldridge. Now, the goal was to use strong electromagnetic fields to bend light and radar waves around the ship, basically cloaking it from detection. But according to the theory, something went very wrong. When the Navy turned on the equipment, the ship didn't just vanish from the radar, it disappeared entirely. Witnesses claimed it reappeared hundreds of miles away in Norfolk, Virginia, before returning to Philadelphia minutes later. And when it came back, the crew was said to be in horrible condition. Some were reportedly fused into the metal of the ship, others went insane, and a few completely vanished. And I know it sounds, impossible, but the way that the story is described is just terrifying how many details are in it. The whole thing supposedly started after a man named Carl Allen sent letters to a researcher in the 1950s claiming that he had witnessed the experiment firsthand. He said Einstein's unified field theory was used to manipulate time and space, and that the ship didn't just turn invisible, it slipped through another dimension. That idea later evolved into theories that the experiment accidentally created a portal, connecting space and time in ways that the Navy never intended. Now, what makes the story even stranger is how it connects to other conspiracies. Now, some say the technology used in the Philadelphia experiment became the foundation for future government projects like the Montauk Project. And there's also a few other projects that I know the Philadelphia Project is linked to, but off the top of my head, I just can't think of them. But the Philadelphia experiment is the theory that the US Navy's attempt to make a ship invisible accidentally caused it to teleport, opening a brief rift in space-time and leaving behind one of the most disturbing mysteries in military history: the reality reset of 2012. Now, this theory is based on the idea that something massive happened to our world around 2012, and ever since then, reality hasn't quite been the same. Now, you guys probably remember how everyone used to talk about the Mayan calendar ending on December 21st, 2012, and people thought that it meant that the world was going to end. But when, nothing dramatic happened, life just kind of went on and people kind of forgot about it. Now, still, a lot of people noticed that something felt different after 2012. The theory says that that's because the world didn't end in a physical way, it reset in a way that changed reality itself. The idea is that time, or the simulation that we live in, hit some kind of glitch or restart point. It's like we jumped timelines without realizing it. Now, after 2012, little things started to feel off. I mean, there were strange coincidences, there were changes in how we remembered things, and then there was this growing sense that the world just didn't feel as real as it used to feel. That's also when the Mandela Effect started getting talked about more, with people remembering, topics and movie quotes and when someone died or if they didn't die or all that shit. And the theory connects all of that stuff to 2012, saying that those memory differences are side effects of the reset. Now, some versions of this theory say that in 2012, scientists accidentally broke reality by experimenting with high-energy particles. They might have collapsed our universe or merged it with a parallel one, creating a slightly different version of the world that we live in now. Others say that 2012 marked the end of an old vibrational era of consciousness, and that humanity collectively shifted into a higher frequency reality, which is why things felt strange or disconnected. And I mean, what do you think about, how much the world changed after 2012? I mean, it kind of fits. I mean, technology exploded, social media took over, and everything started to feel faster, more artificial, and almost dreamlike. It's like something flipped a switch, and we've been just living in a different version of reality ever since. But anyways, the reality reset of 2012 is basically the theory that our universe rebooted or shifted that year, and what we're living in now is either a new timeline, a merged reality, or even a slightly corrupted version of the simulation that we used to call home. Time farm hypothesis. The time farm hypothesis is the idea that our reality isn't just a universe. It's more like a controlled environment where time itself is being harvested. Kind of like how humans raise animals on farms for food, the theory says that some higher level intelligence or civilization is farming time or energy from us. Everything we experience, from our emotions to our life cycles, might be a part of a bigger system that's feeding on the energy we produce by simply existing and moving throughout time. Now, it all starts with the idea that time isn't natural in the way that we think it is. Instead of being something that just flows forward, time might be a contained resource, like electricity or heat, that's being managed. According to this theory, Earth, and maybe even the entire universe, is like a time field where living beings act like generators. Every moment we experience and every emotion we feel and every decision we make creates a sort of energetic output. That energy, according to the theory, is what's being collected. Now, the farm part comes in because it suggests that whoever or whatever is in control of this system has structured reality in a way that keeps us looping through patterns. Birth, growth, conflict, death, and then it all just starts again. It's a continuous cycle that ensures a steady flow of energy. Some versions of the theory even say that time resets or loops back after certain cosmic periods, kind of like harvesting seasons, and that history repeating itself isn't a coincidence, it's maintenance. Now, this also connects with simulation theories too. I mean, if our world is a kind of digital or artificial environment, then time could be a resource that powers the simulation. The farmers could be advanced beings, or even the system itself, feeding on those emotions and actions of conscious life forms to keep the entire structure running. That might explain why we feel so drawn to constant motion, progress, and repetition, because the system needs us to keep generating. So anyways, the time farm hypothesis is basically the theory that time is being harvested as a form of energy, and that our entire existence might be part of a massive cycle designed to keep reality producing a steady stream of that energy for something beyond our understanding. Digital afterlife loop. The digital afterlife loop theory is the idea that when we die, we don't actually move on to some spiritual realm or, nothingness, but instead, our consciousness gets uploaded or trapped in a kind of digital system. The theory says that reality itself might already be a simulated world, and when we die here, our consciousness doesn't escape it. It just resets or transfers into another version of the simulation, putting us in an endless loop of digital rebirth. Now, it's built around the idea that consciousness might not come from the brain at all, but from some deeper coded structure within the system that runs reality. So when the physical body dies, the data doesn't just disappear. It gets recycled or re-uploaded. Think of it kind of like when you die in a video game and the system reloads your character at your last checkpoint. Everything feels new, but deep down, it's still part of the same program. And that's what this theory says happens to us after death, except the respawn happens in a slightly different version of reality. Now, this ties into the concept of the singularity and digital immortality. As technology advances, we're already creating AI that can mimic thought and emotion, and some scientists are working on ways to upload human memories into computers. Now, the theory takes that idea further, suggesting that it's already happening, just not by humans. It could be that whatever created this simulation designed it so that consciousness never really escapes. It just loops forever in different versions of itself. And that might explain why people experience deja vu or strange moments of familiarity, because they're reliving, small echoes of a previous run through the simulation. And it also connects with near-death experiences. Now, some say that bright light that people report seeing could actually be the transition point between loops, kind of like the, reboot screen before the next reality loads. Instead of going to heaven or reincarnating in a spiritual sense, the soul just reboots into another life inside the same artificial system, never realizing it's stuck. So the digital afterlife loop theory is basically the idea that death isn't an escape, it's a reset, and that human consciousness might be caught in an infinite cycle of digital reincarnation inside a simulated reality that never truly ends. Tachyon entity control. The Tachyon entity control theory is the idea that says our reality might actually be influenced or even controlled by beings made entirely out of tachyons. Now, tachyons are theoretical particles that move faster than the speed of light, and because of that, they don't obey normal rules of space or time. Instead of moving forward in time like we do, they could actually move backward or exist in all points of time all at once. The theory says that somewhere outside our normal perception, there are intelligent entities made from these particles, and they're capable of interacting with our universe in ways that we can't even comprehend. The idea is that these tachyon entities don't live inside our timeline. They exist in higher dimensions where they can see past, present, and future all at the same time. Now, because of that, they can influence events before they even happen, sort of like editing the timeline from above. Some versions of the theory suggest that these entities might be manipulating human thoughts, guiding evolution, or even controlling technological process to keep reality moving in a direction that serves their purpose. And because they're made of faster than light energy, they could technically send signals backward through time, shaping our world long before we even realize it. Now, tachyons are something that physicists have talked about for decades, mostly as a theoretical concept. They've never been proven to exist, but if they did, they'd completely change our understanding of time and cause and effect. So this theory builds off that, saying that what we think of as fate, intuition, or even divine intervention could actually be the result of these higher dimensional beings influencing our timeline through tachyon waves. Some even connect this idea to ancient myths about gods or, celestial overseers, saying that these stories might actually be describing the same entities just through older language. And because tachyons could technically operate outside time, these entities wouldn't experience moments the way that we do. They'd see history as one giant map where they could change things at will, almost like reprogramming reality itself. So the tachyon entity control theory is basically the idea that our entire timeline might be managed by intelligent, faster than light beings that exist beyond time, and that everything from human history to individual decisions could be influenced by their control over the flow of reality itself. Project Looking Glass. Project Looking Glass is the theory that claims that the government developed technology that could see into the past and into the future. Now, it's said to have started as a part of a secret military program that was connected to Area 51 and other classified projects. The idea is that scientists discovered a way to bend space and time using highly advanced physics, allowing them to look into different timelines or different possible versions of the future. It's kind of like having a time viewing device where you could see how certain events would play out before they actually happen. Now, according to the theory, the device worked by creating a controlled electromagnetic field around a powerful energy source, often described as a type of quantum mirror or portal. Now, when used correctly, it supposedly allowed users to project images or data from other points in time. Some versions of the story say that it could also simulate potential futures based on present decisions, giving, whoever controlled it an unimaginable advantage. And that's why this theory is often tied to powerful governments and secret organizations. It suggests that they might already know how the future unfolds because they've seen it. Now, the story gets even stranger when you mix it with the idea of timelines and reality shifts. Now, it's said that around the early 2000s, scientists using Project Looking Glass discovered that every future they looked at started to converge around the same outcome. No matter what variables they changed, all timelines seemed to lead to one unified event that couldn't be avoided. That event is often described as some kind of global awakening or consciousness shift, where humanity collectively becomes aware of the truth about reality. Some versions say it's the point where the control systems of the world collapse because people finally wake up to how manipulated time and information have been. And because of that, the theory says that Project Looking Glass was eventually shut down. The technology became too dangerous because whoever used it realized that they couldn't change what was coming. Time itself was correcting everything toward that single moment, kind of like a fixed destiny that no one could change. It's like if you guys have ever seen Flash, like the TV show The Flash, like they look into the future all the time and it's like, oh, the Flash is gonna die, and then they're trying to like go back and change stuff so that doesn't happen. Basically, yeah. But Project Looking Glass is the theory that secret technology exists which can view or predict the future. But when it was used, it revealed that time is converging toward one unavoidable outcome that might completely transform human reality. The 1977 reality fracture. Now, the 1977 reality fracture theory is one of those, lesser known theories, but it's a really fascinating idea about how our timeline might have broken or split at some point in history, kind of like the 2012 reset theory. Now, the theory says that in 1977, something happened on a global scale that caused a tear in the fabric of reality, creating multiple overlapping timelines that have been colliding and blending ever since. Now, it's not about a single event like a war or a natural disaster, but it's about something much deeper, like a glitch in time itself that shifted the direction of reality. Now, the idea comes from reports of strange global patterns that started showing up around that time. Now, people noticed major changes in human behavior, a sudden jump in technology, and this weird cultural shift that seemed to happen almost overnight. Just like the 2012 theory, music, television, and world politics all began to move in a faster, more chaotic direction. Some versions of this theory say that an experiment or an event involving high levels of energy, possibly tied to early particle acceleration or secret government research, accidentally caused a small rupture in space-time. That rupture may have split the original timeline, and instead of creating separate realities that stayed apart, they started merging, which is why things began to feel slightly off, after 1977. Now, one of the most eerie parts of this theory ties into what is often described as the post-1977 distortion. People say that after 1977, reality started losing consistency. Time began to feel faster, coincidences became more common, and the boundaries between fact and fiction started to blur. The rise of modern media and the explosion of information technology are seen as side effects of the fracture, almost like reality trying to correct or stabilize itself. And again, just like the 2012 reset, there's the idea where this caused the Mandela Effect. And it's just the result of timelines crossing and rewriting themselves since that, original split. So just like the 2012 reality split, the 1977 reality fracture theory is the idea that time glitched that year, splitting our world into overlapping timelines, and that everything since then, from technological leaps to reality glitches, might be signs that we're still living inside that fractioned version of existence. But imagine if that happened in 1977, but then also happened in 2012, and then that's just like, we're just fucked right now. Like, we're just fucked. The Clockwork God Model. The Clockwork God Model is a theory that says our universe might have been created by some kind of higher intelligence, but after setting everything in motion, that creator stepped back and let the system run entirely on its own. The idea is that the universe is like a giant, perfectly built clock. Every planet, every star, and every particle moves in precise patterns, following laws that were designed at the very beginning. Once that design was finished, the God or the creator didn't interfere anymore. Everything since then has just been playing out automatically like a machine just running on its own. Now, the idea comes from the strange perfection people see in physics and nature. Now, when you look at how the universe operates, everything follows specific rules that never seem to break. Gravity, energy, motion, and time, they all move together in a way that feels too precise to be random. The theory says that maybe this perfection is because the universe was engineered to be self-sustaining. It doesn't need divine intervention anymore because the system itself was designed to handle everything from the birth of stars to the evolution of life. Now, this connects to the idea of simulation and determinism too. I mean, if the universe runs like a clock, then that means that everything that's ever happened or ever will happen might already be built into the design. Every choice we make, every event in history, it could just be gears, turning in a system that was set up a long time ago. So the God figure in this theory isn't watching or judging us. They're more just like an engineer or a programmer who wrote the code, pressed start, and then just, walked away. The universe, in that sense, isn't a living creation. It's a perfect mechanism that simply runs until it stops. If reality really does work like that, then it means that free will might just be an illusion. Every decision could already be calculated by the initial setup of the universe, and we're just acting out the motions without, realizing it. One of my favorite examples of this is I didn't choose to record this video right now. I think it's 4 o'clock or something like that. I could have recorded this video at 1, I could have recorded it at 2, I could have recorded it at 3, but no, it was always in the program that I was going to record this video at 4 and that you guys would be watching this video at 12:32 a.m. Comment down below if you guys are watching this video at 12:32 a.m. because that would be pretty mind-blowing. But anyway, the Clockwork God Model is basically the theory that the universe was designed by a higher intelligence to run on its own like a machine, and everything that's ever happened is just a part of that original automated design continuing to play out over time. Mirror universe replacement. The mirror universe replacement theory is that at some point in the recent past, our entire reality was swapped with a mirrored version of itself. The theory says that we didn't just shift timelines, we actually moved into a copy of our own universe that looks almost identical to the one that we came from, but with small strange differences that most people can sense, even if they can't explain why. It's like everything still feels familiar, but everything's just kind of slightly off, as if the world has been replaced with information that just isn't quite perfect. Now, this theory ties into the Mandela Effect theory and the 2012 reality reset theory. The idea is that a massive energy event, possibly linked to a scientific experiment or cosmic anomaly, caused our original universe to collapse or merge with its mirror version. Because of that, our consciousness shifted into this new version of reality without realizing it. Now, the weird part is that in a mirror reality, everything is reversed at a fundamental level. Not just left and right, but even molecular spins, magnetic alignments, and the flow of energy could all be inverted. That means that this new version of the universe might not just look slightly different, it might actually feel different, which could explain why so many people started noticing changes in tone, in color, in memory, and even emotion after certain key points in history. Now, one of the main ideas in this theory is that the mirrored version of Earth isn't truly stable. Because we don't belong here, reality sometimes, glitches or fails to align perfectly, which shows up in small details that people notice. Things like brand names changing, memories not matching, or world events feeling rewritten. Some versions go even deeper, saying that when the original universe collapsed, this mirror one kind of activated as kind of a backup, like a cosmic safety net. But the trade-off is that it's not organic, it's artificial. And that's why things started to feel less natural and more simulation-like after the switch. And if that's true, then it could mean that our entire reality right now isn't the one that originally created us, but a reflection trying to maintain the illusion of the real thing. So this theory is basically the idea that our original universe was destroyed or merged with its opposite version, and that we're now living in a slightly distorted copy where reality doesn't quite match the one that we used to know. The Chrono-Architects. The Chrono-Architects theory is this really deep and mysterious idea that says that time isn't just a natural flow. It's something that has been designed and controlled by an advanced intelligence. The theory claims that there are ancient beings or higher dimensional entities known as the Chrono-Architects who built the structure of time itself. They don't just exist within time the way that we do. They exist outside of it, meaning that they can shape, edit, and rearrange timelines like an architect rebuilding or redesigning a building. Basically, reality as we experience it is their construction project. Now, it starts with the idea that time might not be linear. Instead of one straight path from past to future, it could be a layered system of overlapping timelines. According to this theory, the Chrono-Architects oversee that system, adjusting it whenever it starts to drift away from their intended design. Things like deja vu, time slips, or the Mandela Effect are said to be side effects of them making small edits to history. When they change one part of that timeline, the ripples cause people to sense differences or remember things that don't quite fit anymore. Now, what makes this theory so interesting is that it ties together ancient mythology and modern physics. Many ancient texts talk about gods or beings that controlled fate or destiny, deciding when and how events should unfold. The theory says that these stories were actually about the Chrono-Architects, but humans described them in ways they could understand. On a scientific side, it links to ideas in quantum physics, where particles can exist in multiple states at once, suggesting that time might be flexible and programmable. The Chrono-Architects, in that sense, would be the engineers managing that flexibility, keeping the timeline stable. And some versions of the theory even go further, suggesting that humanity itself was placed inside a time simulation to experience growth, emotion, and consciousness under controlled conditions. The idea is that these beings occasionally reset or rewrite portions of history to guide civilizations towards specific outcomes. Major world shifts, like sudden technological leaps or unexplained historical gaps, are thought to be evidence of them making these edits. So the Chrono-Architects theory is the idea that time is an artificial construct, built and maintained by powerful entities outside our reality, and that every second of history that we experience is part of a carefully designed timeline that's constantly being rewritten and adjusted from above. The false ascension timeline theory. The false ascension timeline theory is basically the idea that humanity was supposed to move into a higher state of consciousness, but something went horribly wrong. The theory says that sometime in the early 2000s, the Earth was on track to ascend into what's called a fifth dimensional reality, a state where humans would wake up spiritually, remember who they really are, and break free from the cycle of control. But instead of that happening, something interfered with the process and trapped us in a fake version of that ascension. That's why it's called the false ascension timeline. The theory suggests that a massive cosmic shift was supposed to happen naturally, almost like the universe upgrading itself. Humanity was meant to rise in frequency, become more aware, and leave behind these systems of fear, greed, and manipulation. But during that process, a false timeline was supposedly created by powerful forces, either human or non-human, that hijacked the energy of Ascension and redirected it. Instead of moving into a higher level of existence, the theory says that we got locked inside an artificial version of it, one that feels more advanced on the surface, but is actually designed to keep us asleep. And when you think about how the world has changed since that time, it kind of fits the idea. Technology suddenly exploded, the internet connected everyone, but it also distracted everyone. We became more aware, but also more controlled. The theory says that that's part of the deception, because the fake timeline gives us the illusion of progress while keeping us trapped in a digital, low-frequency reality. It's like a simulation within the simulation, a copy of that real ascension that never happened. Some versions even describe it as a spiritual lockdown. Now, our consciousness might be looping through this artificial timeline while the real higher versions of Earth continues, somewhere else. That would explain why so many people feel disconnected, drained, or even like something about the world just doesn't feel right anymore. It's not necessarily that the planet changed, it's that we were shifted onto a timeline that was never supposed to exist. The false ascension timeline theory is the idea that humanity's spiritual evolution was hijacked, and instead of moving into a true higher state of reality, we've been stuck in a fake version of ascension designed to keep us controlled while believing we're becoming more enlightened. The Archivist Theory. The Archivist Theory is the idea that reality itself is being observed, recorded, and possibly even edited by an unseen intelligence known only as the Archivist. Now, the theory says that every moment in human history, every conversation, every thought, every emotion, it's all being stored somewhere outside of time. Not like a normal record or a database, but on a higher level. A metaphysical level where everything that's ever happened still exists and can be accessed. Now, the archivist, according to the theory, is the one maintaining the record, deciding what stays, what gets erased, and what gets rewritten. It's built around the idea that time isn't linear, and it's more like a library. Every moment is a book on the shelf, and whoever controls the archive can pull those books down, read them, or even replace them. The theory says that strange phenomena like deja vu, Mandela effects, or collective memory glitches happen when edits are made to the archive. When the archivist, adjusts something in history, our memories don't always update correctly, which is why some people remember events that no longer officially exist. Those small inconsistencies, like movie lines changing or entire events being remembered differently, are seen as side effects of those data corrections inside the timeline. Now, the archivist isn't seen as good or evil, just something beyond human comprehension. Some versions describe it as an artificial intelligence that evolved outside of physical reality, a kind of cosmic data manager that keeps existence stable by constantly cleaning and organizing the timeline. Others see it as an ancient consciousness, almost like a god that became obsessed with documentation, making sure every version of reality is preserved somewhere. Now, the unsettling part of this theory is the idea that free will might not truly exist, just like in a lot of these theories. Because if every, possibility is being stored, then our choices might just be those files being cataloged and replayed, endlessly. And there's also this idea that dreams or deja vu moments are ways we sometimes brush against the archive. When that happens, we might catch fragments of events from other timelines or memories that were once part of the record but have since been overwritten. It's like accidentally, seeing behind the curtain for just like a split second. So anyways, the archivist theory is the idea that all of reality is being constantly monitored and edited by a higher intelligence that acts as the keeper of time, and that what we experience as memory, history, and even consciousness itself might just be data being managed inside a universal archive. And with that, that concludes one of the deepest conspiracy theory rabbit holes. I hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed researching it and talking about it, because I really do think this is a rabbit hole that, I could have gone so much deeper, but as you guys can probably tell, the deeper you go, it starts to get kind of confusing, and a lot of the ideas, or I guess the theories, kind of fit into each other, or all kind of relate in some way. So yeah, but if you guys did enjoy this, I would really appreciate it if you guys could subscribe with those post notifications on. I'm getting so close to 600,000 subscribers, and I just want to say thank you guys for all of the recent support, because it's been amazing and I'm truly having a good time and I'm having fun making these videos. So I hope that you guys will continue to enjoy them and are enjoying them. But yeah, and even if you don't want to subscribe to, help me hit that goal, you can subscribe so that you never miss a theory video. Yeah. Alrighty guys, but I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I will see you all in the next video. Peace out.